Alrighty, thanks everybody. But I want to talk a little bit about, yesterday I spoke about decentralized autonomous corporations and the ability to create autonomous technological communities that essentially replace centralized functions that are dominating NASDAQ, Dow, et cetera. I want to take a little bit of look at the landscape. So this is kind of how we see it. In 2008, Bitcoin entered this space with a trustless ledger. For the first time, we were able to transfer value from point A to point B digitally without any middleman. This got everybody thinking, wow, unhackable data transfer, what can we do with that? We can reinvent the entire economy. Fast forward to 2014, Ethereum came out. There was a lot of things in between, little advancements, but Ethereum proved the demand for generalized smart contracts. They were able to lower the block times. They were able to do a lot of things, basically make programmable value. And this is really where a lot of the catalyst for starting these decentralized autonomous organizations got very real. Unfortunately, the platform doesn't allow for a live environment of high-performance decentralized autonomous corporations, but it did do a great job to show, hey, this is something that we need to tackle. We believe that the future is something that delivers a high-performance platform for smart businesses or decentralized autonomous corporations. So there's a huge gap between where we actually are today and where we need to be. If you take a look at what is high performance, we're talking 20, 30, 50, 100,000 transactions per second, and that's just one business. The design of these platforms is that many businesses will reside on the single platform, which means in reality, we need to scale to millions of transactions per second if we really want to make this dream a reality. But this is where we are today. Bitcoin is performing about 3 transactions per second. Ethereum generously can perform about 30. In addition to the low throughput of these platforms, they're also extraordinarily expensive. We're spending billions of dollars a year on each of these platforms for mining. And if you divide that up amongst the transaction cost of each individual transaction of what it's able to perform, we're really looking at something like $3 to $7 US per transaction. These systems are also pretty slow. We're talking 45 minutes or up to a minute or minute to 45 minutes to actually confirm a transaction on these platforms. So while it's very exciting that for the first time we had peer-to-peer value transfer without any middlemen, no governments, no banks, et cetera, right? They're actually the slowest, most expensive, and limited platforms or payment systems that we've ever invented. So I'm working with an incredible chief technology officer named Dan Larimer. He's been involved in inventing a lot of the concepts that are now becoming the future of the blockchain. In 2013, he invented or put forth the idea of a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and moved into a delegated proof of stake in order to get high performance. Iterated on that, eventually was able to do 100,000 transactions per second on one chain for nominal costs. We're talking fractions of a cent, a millionth of a cent per transaction. In 2016, he conceived, built, deployed, launched, and had 100,000 users per day in a project called Steem, which is the first content network on the blockchain. In addition to gaining widespread or the first mainstream adoption of cryptocurrencies or decentralized autonomous organizations throughout society, it has 40% women. And the vast majority of people using Steem don't even realize they're using the blockchain. This gives you an idea of the kind of network activity or market share that Steem and BitShares, the 2 projects that he's created in the past, are actually consuming. In fact, Steem and BitShares have more transactions per second on their network than Bitcoin and Ethereum combined, which is pretty incredible when you think that some of these platforms, specifically Ethereum, is a platform for businesses to be built on. And we've spent about $1 billion investing in Ethereum projects, and it still doesn't have as many transactions per second as Steem alone. So the problem here is smart businesses are just too hard to build. It's like taking a computer. In fact, that's what they're calling it, a world computer. And we're all trying to build applications. We're trying to build the next Facebook. We're trying to build the Airbnb, the Uber, the decentralized economy, but we're missing an operating system. That's like trying to build it without Windows, right? And so the reality is people just can't get past that. And that's why nothing's actually launched. And the limitations of these existing platforms don't even allow a proper, well-constructed operating system to run, because just the operating system alone would require more throughput than what these platforms are able to perform. So Having built the two largest smart businesses in the world, Dan was the first person to really realize, what do all of these DAOs have in common? And that's how you build a generalized platform. You isolate the commonalities amongst each and individual business, and you say, hey, all DAOs need this, so we can provide it for them, and we can build it into the blockchain to create an operating system-like construct. Web applications, responsiveness, it needs to be upgradable, right? Something that blockchain has struggled with tremendously. Competitors are always entering the market. We need to be able to come together, force consensus, and move on to the next stage. They need to be recoverable, right? This system, blockchain, is not going to go mainstream, right? When it is built only for perfect code, and that's how the blockchains exist today. And you probably have, some of you have heard of the DAO hack, for example, right? Well, because these systems are built for perfect code, we had to do a hard fork in order to recover from that. And what it did was split the community in two, because you have a centralized entity making unilateral decisions, and ultimately, when there's no ability to manage the expectations of the public, when something's going to go wrong, how decisions are going to be made in order to address that, right? You end up dividing the community in two, and it will happen over and over and over again. So EOS introduces parallel processing. By implementing asymmetrical communication to chains, we can essentially add a new chain. Already dealing with the highest throughput of 100,000 transactions per second, we can add chain after chain after chain, which allows us to scale to millions of transactions per second with ease. And what that ultimately allows us to do is, as I mentioned, is build an operating system. EOS is the first blockchain operating system. And what this does is it is completely revolutionary on a lot of fronts. Not only does it make blockchain development extremely fast, and we're talking about on the magnitude of 10, 20 times faster in order to build these things. Remember, the most complex smart business today, the most widely used smart business today, Steemit, was built, conceived, and launched in less than 6 months, including its adoption. There isn't a single business launched on these other platforms yet today, and we've been in development for 3 or 4 years at this point. In addition to making it very quick, it massively lowers the barriers to entry for developers, and this is what's really critical. Right now, if you want to build on existing platforms that don't have an operating system, you need to know cryptographic principles, and you need to be able to manipulate the actual blockchain code itself. That's like jumping into native hardware and trying to build something on top of it. There is only 1 to 2% of developers even have the capacity to do that. I would argue that there's only 10 to 20 people in the world that can actually manipulate blockchain protocols in order to create products. It's so difficult. It's not something that we can scale. But EOS allows it so that web developer, anyone that's built a website is going to be able to build an application. They're going to be able to build a Steem. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow the product development experts to move into the space, start implementing social engineering concepts, and start taking this to the whole new level, right? Because the same people that are laying the rails for the infrastructure, the people that laid the rails of the infrastructure of the internet, they're not the ones that built Facebook. They're not the product guys, right? And you can't expect them to be the same people. You can't force people to have both qualifications in order to release a product. So I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but what is EOS? The EOS network is its token holders, and there's several things that come with that. In addition to allowing or choosing the block producers, they're able to allocate network emissions. EOS is biologically self-sufficient. So after the initial billion tokens are distributed, up to 5% of the tokens are created and issued every year. And the token holders control where that money goes. So what that means is, and they're called collective benefit contracts, it means that anyone can propose anything to the network, right? And I can say, I want to do this. I want to market, I want to distribute, I want to do all sorts of things for the EOS community. If those token holders vote for me, right, I will receive part of the emissions on an annual basis, right? If you take a market cap of Bitcoin and you apply 5%, we're talking about $2 billion a year that goes through decentralized budgeting. That's more VC money in 1 year, right, than the ecosystem has seen since launch. Where we get this money, what's so interesting about it is that because we're not using proof of work, we're moving to proof of stake, This is actually money we're spending already. $4 billion a year between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's completely wasted. There's absolutely zero value recapture. We spend it on electricity, and we spend it on hardware. And unfortunately, it's extremely damaging for the environment. I could put forth a smart contract that just proposed that we burn the coins or destroyed them. If people started voting it, that would mean that we were eliminating the dilution from the network, and we could move to a deflationary state if people wanted to. I could even build a decentralized autonomous organization on top of EOS, which is a DAO itself. And what that would potentially allow is I could create something that distributed the money to various regions that then went to hackathons. People were voting. If you voted right, you started to earn money. I could do anything that you can possibly imagine. These smart contracts are like ports for the money. I could even split it into 6 more, right? They're infinite in nature, and this allows the token holders to take the network into the future in any way any way that they would like. Just very quickly, we have a great team. We spent a lot of time working with the top VCs in the space. We're working with Fenbushi Capital. We're working with Blockchain Capital. We're working with Li Xiaolai in China. We're working with Bitfinex, the exchange, Yunbi, the exchange. And we've been developing this for a good year now. This is a community project. We've put it forth. Our code is on GitHub, and we're iterating it on a daily basis with the public. So I just wanted to give you a very quick, I know it's been a long day, overview of EOS. We've had a lot of questions. I appreciate you let us take the time. Is there any quick questions? Yes? Yes, so the block producers have the ability to censor malicious transactions. And that allows the community to turn away from those instead of actually going through the consequences and having to split through a hard fork. EOS introduces a constitution, and this is one of the most innovative things, although it's not on the presentation. So what we're actually deploying is an end-user license agreement. So every time you put a transaction on the EOS network, you're consenting to the latest constitution, which is hosted by all the block producers. That means for the first time, if I launch a blockchain-based business, I don't need to worry about getting sued in 150 different jurisdictions. It defaults to international arbitration. Of course, that can be superseded by mutual agreement of the 2 parties doing a transaction. But ultimately, what EOS does is forces consensus. It would be able to censor those malicious transactions and resume back to normal. The effect would be absolutely nothing on the network. Anything else? Alrighty, thank you guys very much. Have a good evening.